Hello, hello. Alright, guys, for the people debating, just make sure this is the microphone being used. When you clip it on, the clip is like this. The microphone is this small circle, not this one. It's this one. So you clip it on with this heading up. Yeah. Alright. So when you've finished speaking, just put it back on here for the next team to use. When you're done, put it when you're about to speak. Just put it on.
Atifa. But I did cap slash. It's your motion. You want to judge it or not? I don't want to judge malas lah. That's why I let him at junior USC. Sure or not? You're manifesting the energy. Your choice lah.
I could
no, but at least one camp member has to be in the Nika. Atifa take off the I wanted to remove this motion. I wanted to remove this motion. Kept it out.
Alright guys, so when you speak later, this microphone, this circle here, shall be facing upwards to you. Okay. So clip it on like this and not like this. Another way to look at it is the lights, it's supposed to be upwards. Okay. Alright, so when you're done speaking, just put it back.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Senior Grand Finals of Intertech Education's Malaysia WSDC. Congratulations to both teams for making it this far to the finals. On site government, we have the froggy adjudicator versus opposition chicken rice consumers. Judging alongside me is...
I am Summer.
I'm Aaron, good luck for the debate.
I'm Aiman, good luck for the debate.
I'm Atifa, good luck for the debate.
And I'm Nagesan, chair for the final round. The motion reads, this house as a teacher would integrate the use of online lingo and trends in their education syllabus, e.g. Sigma, RIS, NOCAP, SYPAU. With that, I invite the Prime Minister to start the debate. Good luck.
Am I audible? Is my volume okay? Okay. Yo, chat, when Bethany told us that this was a weird debate motion, we were thinking, how bad could it be? But he was right, no cap. Today, our house, as a teacher, would integrate the use of online lingo and trends in our education syllabus. For example, yes. Okay, so first I'm going to give you characterizations about how students in the generation that we are in right now are like, and what are our incentives as a teacher, and then I'll be giving you my arguments. So first, we have to understand that this generation is different. Children in our generation right now are different from traditional children because children these days have huge accessibility to internet, so they learn the internet's ways. And so what this does to them and what the characteristics of children these days are like is two things. First, they have short attention spans because when all you watch is TikToks and Reels all days that are only 1 minute long, you slowly lose the patience that you have to be able to focus in 40 minutes classroom lessons. Number two, they don't respect traditionally supposed to be respected figures. For example, children nowadays don't fear their parents and their teachers as much as children in the 80s would, as you could probably say, because they find them cringe. They find the fact that these older generations cannot relate to them, cannot get what they're talking about. They think this is a very cringe thing, and they think that the older generations do not deserve their respect because of this. So, as the teacher, what we want isn't to change the educational system. What the job of a teacher is to explain, is to use the simplest way to teach the syllabus to the students in a way that the students understand. And in this case, the way that the students understand would be to incorporate the thing that they are most exposed to, which is the internet and lingo. So, what are the problems that teachers in the status quo face? The problem faced by these teachers is that the students are not paying attention during lessons. So, two instances for this. Number one, when teachers talk, students don't listen because the lesson is 40 minutes, which is 40 times longer than the 1 minute videos that these students are used to. Number two, they are not being respected by students because these students find people who don't listen, who don't get their lingo and don't get their trends cringe. So when you don't respect someone, you don't find the need to listen to them, hence you do not pay attention. Now, as a teacher, we have our students' best interests at heart. We want them to understand the syllabus. And as a teacher, we have to adapt to the new teaching methods to ensure this. We have to note that this incorporating lingo, the use of lingo in your lesson isn't something bad, as it is just a new teaching method, like using flashcards, like showing YouTube videos during your lessons. It is the same thing. It is just, it uses a trendy way. And it's just a new teaching method. So how are we as a teacher going to be incorporating these lingo in our lessons? Number one, number one. When explaining syllabus, which are usually a long bunch of words, just blah, 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 yapping coming out of your mouth, which is usually associated with boring. So occasionally, we will occasionally use, in the proper suitable context, of course, we will switch words with the same meaning to lingo. For example, when I as a teacher, I'm telling children that this is true, I will say, no cap, guys. And okay, so what things we provide under this mechanism? Two things. Number one, engagement. By using these words, students feel interested because it breaks this traditional impression that teachers are boring, very serious. And so, like, when you're sleeping in class and your teacher suddenly says something funny, everyone laughs, you just wake up because you feel FOMO, so you are interested in the class, in the lesson. Number 2, relatability. When used correctly, students feel recognized and understood. Hence, relatability brings you likability. Now for my argument, first argument, relatability. Children prioritize likability over respect. Children don't think of respect as a natural thing. You have to earn their respect. And how we do that? Number 1, we do that by showing them that we understand. Children are different, but same. No matter the generation, they want to be recognized. They want people to like the same things that they like. Today, if I like playing a certain game, I want my friends to like that game and play that game too. This is what children want too. Number 2, when we relate to our students, we will have this bond. And when we have bonds between us, we can have engagement. So we get to build this bond, and this is important because teachers aren't just teaching the syllabus. They are like a role model figure for the students. So we need to have a bond in order to understand the children, in order to better execute your jobs. And for my second argument, how teachers using this lingo actually brings good influence to the students. Now, we have to understand that these students are heavily exposed to the internet. Even if you, as a teacher, don't bring the words up in the classroom, they still know it anyways. So even if you don't use it, they're still going to use it. So why not let us take the initiative to use it in the correct way so that the children can be educated about the context where these kind of words are used. So a problem that we are facing in our current education system is that the teachers decide to avoid things that are awkward to talk about. For example, sex education. You don't see your teacher in class educating students about sex education, about what periods are like, what age is suitable for doing it. But this is something that is very important for students and for people. So we do not want to use this kind of avoiding education system, but instead we want to take the initiative to teach students about things that are sort of controversial but very important. So how this brings good influence? Number 1, we tell them where not to use. When I bring up the word sigma in class, I'm going to tell my students where this word is used, what is the meaning, and where not to use it. For example, in formal situations, for example, during their essays, I will be telling them what is the meaning behind the word and what is the context, where they can't use it and where they should be using it. Number 2, I as a teacher still have responsibility. Just because I am using this lingo doesn't mean I am going to, completely be friends with my students. There is still going to be this boundary where I still realize that I am a teacher and I have responsibilities. So of course I'm going to be using these words in the correct context. And here on government side, we define lingo as words that are trendy, no racial stereotype, and intended to be funny. And we are only going to be using them verbally and not in the syllabus. So they are only used in funny and unofficial moments. So there is no formal use like in essays. So which is why our house better provides education to our students, because all these are only exclusive on our side because we provide relatability to our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. To open up the opposition's case, Leader of Opposition. Here.
All right, am I audible at this volume? All right, thank you. I'll start my speech now. So, dear opposition, respectfully, shut your bitch ass up. All right, mind my language, okay? See, this is how they want teachers to be teaching, to be saying these things in their classes. They want teachers to use these sort of lingos that have profanities in them while teaching young, impressionable children. So, on to my characterizations. Now, first of all, let's kind of set the parameter here. What do we mean by actually, what students, who are the audience here? It's the children in kindergarten, in primary schools, or in high schools, right? That's probably the parameter of our debate here. And how do we characterize these people, these individuals, right? We can characterize them as young and impressionable. We can characterize them as someone who's still exploring new things, someone who's still in the process of learning and in the process of sucking in certain knowledge, right? So what do we see in our world today? What is happening? Why do we oppose of this? Is that we can see that with even when teachers do not use these sort of online lingos, we can see that what happened? The literacy dropped. The rate of literacy, the rate of students' ability to read, to speak has dropped with the existence, due to the existence of online lingo and all these trends. So as a teacher, right, mind you, this is an active motion, right? As a teacher, why would I care about this? Why would I care about the usage of my usage of online lingo in this situation here? Because I care about my students. I care about their success. I care about how they speak, how they convey themselves, right? I care. So, on to my further characterization. So, another characterization I will put is on these lingos and trends, right? What do we see these lingos and trends actually convey, right? We see that they are actually constantly changing. There are many updates. I can say POG is also an online lingo, but that's very outdated, from 5 years ago. I can say Sigma, which is from 2-3 years ago, right? So you can see the trends are constantly changing. So there's new things coming on and on again. So the definitions of these things are filled with inconsistencies. I can say that what the site said is, cringe can be different meanings, right? Cringe, I can feel awkwardness, but then they can also say cringe, it's something when I would say to someone I do not respect, how I would describe someone I do not respect, right? There's many different meanings to certain words on these online lingos. There's no definite meaning, because there's nothing out there that gives out a definite meaning. So me as a teacher, when I'm learning all these online lingos and all these trends to use in my classrooms, I don't know which one I want to use. I'm afraid that I will convey to them the wrong message. I'm afraid that when I say, this thing is cringe, they're going to take it as something else. I'm afraid when I say, this is so Sigma, they're going to take it as something else, right? So me as a teacher, I don't think that I should be conveying the wrong message or the wrong knowledge towards my students. No. And also, back to my first sentence, these lingos are filled with profanities. We do not want to be teaching, or we do not want to be encouraging students to speak, to use more of these profanities as a way to express themselves. Now, moving on, I'm going to talk about how impressionable teachers are. So what are teachers? Teachers are the face of education, right? When you see teachers using this sort of lingo, it's a sign, it's an encouragement for you to use it as well, right? As when you're a student, you hear your teacher using this, I'm like, oh, wow, my teacher knows this as well. I think it's fine to say. I think it's fine to say, even if they're saying that, it should not, we are going to teach them to not use it in a formal situation, it should be all informal and such. But the action of you using this already, because you are seen as a formal figure, you are seen as a figure that someone should be respected, right? That they should respect. When you yourself are using these words, when you yourself are using these words, it gives them a sense of encouragement that, yes, these words can be widely used. Even my teacher is using it. Yes, your PI.
Well, then what if your friends on social media also use the same lingo? Doesn't it provide incentive to them to do the same thing? And isn't there no deterrent that stops this on social media and within your friends?
Yeah, social media is not something we can control, right? What we can control as a teacher is my own behavior of me saying it or not, right? It just adds on encouragement. What you're saying is that the impact is coming from social media. But yes, okay, we agree that the impact is coming from social media. But you as a teacher, if you use it, it's going to encourage them to use it even more. It's another layer, right? So, on to my first point, is about the accessibility. So what are we talking about? Why are we talking about accessibility here? Is that there are students of the lower economy who do not have any access to internet. They do not have any access, they do not know what these lingos are, they do not know what they mean. And all they can hear, maybe, they do not know these trends. All information they get is maybe from their classmates. It's about this, about that. But when words travel across, the meaning changes, right? Everything changes. And also, you have lesser contact with it. So, right, as compared to a student who's on the internet, who knows all this information, information and what actually these meanings are. So me as a teacher, when I'm teaching a class, there's obviously going to be students of various different socio-economical status, right? There's obviously going to be various students that are on this part of the internet, are on that part of the internet, that know this meme, that don't know this meme, right? There are different parts of the internet that shows different memes, and there's different online lingos going on in that community as well, right? So there's a wide spread of things that we need to be aware of. So me as a teacher, when I'm using all these lingos, I need to be aware. I need to know that, oh, there's still some students that do not know what the meaning of this word is. So this makes it even less, this is less effective. It's not an efficient way of teaching, right? Like the other side has said, when you're teaching, you're going to bring out the meaning of this word when you use it, right? I believe that is a really low efficient thing to do when you're teaching. When you're teaching, you're supposed to be on the subject you're teaching about, not about teaching them how online lingo is. There's not a class about online lingos and trends, right? So we believe that their side's case is really inefficient. And now to make a small summarization on what our side is promoting today. What we promote is that we want, what we face is the literacy, the issue with literacy with children, right? The way they speak, the way they communicate, right? As a teacher, I see that. I want to change that. And I see that their lack of attention. But I believe that we do not need to be teaching them how to speak profanities. We do not need to be teaching them things that are inconsistent and do not have an actual definition. Me as a teacher, when I want to use, in their side's case, I want to use these online lingos and trends in my class. I need to look up the meaning. I don't know which meaning I want to use. I need to use. I don't know which context can I use it or which context can I not. Because as a teacher, my perspective on this and their perspective on these online lingos are different as well. You're giving different contexts. You're learning these lingos in different contexts. You're approaching and you're coming into contact with it in different contexts. So your meaning and your understanding of it will be different as well. So with all these inconsistencies and all these pros I've given above, I believe as a teacher, I should not be using online lingo and trends in my education syllabus. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition. Next, I invite Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
It is true of opposition to claim that teachers are role models of these students, and I agree with it completely, which is why I will prove to you later on my debate as to why is it that teachers are able to set a real role model to these students. But note that for this entire debate, we cannot deny the fact that teachers are also the main source, the main link for students to the society. This also means that teachers have an incentive and have a burden and responsibility. They have an obligation to teach students the right things, and they have the obligation to educate students in the most efficient way possible. A few rebuttals before I go on to my argumentation. Number one, Opposition argues that teachers might be embarrassed due to the lack of knowledge towards these type of lingos. Teachers might be embarrassed because when they say a specific type of lingo, students might feel that they are saying it in the wrong context. Note that as your responsibility as a teacher, it is your obligation to understand that you are willing to be embarrassed. You are willing to somehow be ridiculous in some way in which you are able to educate the students, because that is your only obligation. Your obligation is to set a role model and educate these students. And when in fact teachers, even in the best case where somehow teachers are embarrassed by these certain circumstances, note that when people laugh together at a specific teacher, it is not in a demeaning way, it is not about in a stereotype or in any way, and even in the worst case, at least there is engagement on our side where there is no engagement on your side, because people tend to engage when something is funny. People tend to engage when other people are laughing and they feel like they are missing out, and they will tend to engage in the class even if it is boring, as long as there is content to it. Number two, they argue that in fact there are a wide variety of lingo, and in fact it does in fact change again and again. Note that there is always a different context for you to apply to it, and I agree with this completely, which is why that we think you can apply lingos in multiple contexts of your own education in the right way, because it has many interpretations of it. There's many definitions that you can use in the right context that you choose to define to your students. Number three, note that your teacher has an obligation to control your own behavior, to control your behavior by stating the parameters of how is it that you apply this lingo. I'll further elaborate this on my mechanization right now, which is exactly how exactly do teachers apply these lingo in their educations. Number one, note that before teachers use lingo, this is an active motion. This teacher has to at least tell them how to use these lingos without turning it into a bad meaning. Because note that anything can be demeaning as long as it is said in the right manner. For example, shut your bitches up can be a joke to someone else, but when you say shut up in a demeaning way, it forces people to feel that they are being controlled, they are being violated, they are being scolded, and this is any words can be used in a bad way as long as you have the intentions to do so. So when teachers set parameters as to how is it that you use these words without offending someone, without using it in the wrong context, without using it in the wrong context, they incentivize students to understand why is it that is necessarily wrong. And note that this cannot be done in opposition, because nothing in social media, nothing within their friends could potentially stop their other friends from saying the same lingo under the wrong context, because of the fact that they want to feel engaged, they want to feel liked. For example, social media, it is only there for your attention span rather than correcting your mistakes. For example, in your friends, they are only there to engage with your conversations rather than trying to address your moral issues, because it is not their obligation, but rather an obligation from the teacher. Number two, for our mechanization, note that teachers use it in a context that is actually classroom friendly. Teacher will not be demeaning to a student intentionally, and note that when we do this, we set the role model that opposition claim is so important. This is our system, that exactly how we apply lingo in our classroom. Next, I'll move on to exactly why is it lingo is important. Note that lingos are the trends, and lingos and the trends are in fact something that is relatable to people. People feel closer, people feel in contact, people feel directly related to these specific type of issues. So this is exactly why is that we are able to enhance the quality of teaching, because it allows students to be able to understand something easily. Three parts to this. Number one, teachers are able to explain difficult concepts without having to have students to learn some basic words. For example, when you want to link two types of things, you're able to use lingo so that students do not have to feel like they do not understand the basic concept of things, and they are able to engage with this concept without having to learn about the basics of certain things. Number two, note that even in these type of lingos, it is seen as fun because it can be engaging in the sense that it might not be directly related to your syllabus, but it can be educational. For example, the word riz, it originates from the word charisma. Students feel engaged when somehow they feel that it is relatable to them. They see this word before and somehow it relates to their education, and they feel a need that somehow teachers are able to educate these students without having to directly sort to boring syllabus method. Number three, note that in most cases, we usually use mnemonics to be able to memorize things. What does it look like? This looks like PMAT to memorize the meiosis phase and mitosis phase. This is what PEMDAS in maths. These are mnemonics that are easy to memorize, but it is easier to memorize when these are lingos. These are lingos and trends that people relate to. When you see this word often, you often remember it so much so that it is not a burden or responsibility or a difficulty for you to do so. And people can associate these type of lingos with concepts that are difficult, concepts that requires strong memorization and strong memory power. Next, note that as your responsibility of a teacher, what we want in the classroom is three things. We want there to be relatability so that there is your student that has preference over you. We want that to be engagement, and we want that to be understanding. Note that since this is a school, students tend to prioritize likability over respect. They do not understand the basis of respect. They do not understand the basis of how respect is implemented. They don't understand the importance of respect. But rather, they tend to generalize the idea to be the ability of how much you like someone. When you like someone, you tend to treat them much better, and this is mutual on both. And this is mutual on respect too, but note that respect is something that is permanent and it is not based on something that can change at any moment, at any given moment. Before I go on, I'll take your PR first.
Do you think that actually the cause of students having low attention span is that teachers are not speaking in a language they like, or?
Right. The cause of low attention span is because, in fact, they are using trends, they are scrolling non-stop. But note that as your responsibility as a teacher, you are not here to change the system. You are not here to somehow change an entire generation to stop scrolling and so on. The only thing that you can do is to use the attention span that they already have to educate these students on certain concepts that you already have. Your responsibility as a teacher is to educate them rather than solve the entire education system, which is something that is not even feasible to begin with on opposition sides. So, all in all, opposition cannot just come up here and say that they do not want to they do not want to engage in issues such as lingo because it's somewhat sensitive. Because note that we have already proved to you exactly why is it that sensitive issues is important. Because when people do not engage in sensitive issues, these children tend to generalize the entire idea of how lingos work in their own context, which means that they tend to generalize it in a bad way and a demeaning way because that is usually how it is used in social media and within their friends. When teachers address it, this is the only preventive measure that is done on both sides of the world, and this is the only thing done in our side, and nothing exists within the opposition side to stop this from happening. So in the end, we have already achieved three things. One, we have already achieved that we have made sure that children are able to engage in your class. Number two, we have able to prove to you why is that children have a motivation to, in fact, impress you because they prefer likability over respect. Number three, we have already proved to you exactly why is that we are able to enhance the study quality of these type of students. For all the reasons above proposed, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. To extend the opposition's case, I invite Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Okay, is this volume audible enough? Alright, I'll start my speech now. First thing first, I would like to start my speech with some call-outs, right? Here's a summarization of the opposition side, the government side's case. Number one, they have mentioned how that it is easier to teach. Number two, they have talked about relatability. And number three, mnemonics. Now, first things first, according to easier to teach, right? They mentioned how that it's easier to teach because of the fact that they are using a language that they should understand, and that they don't have to teach a new context. They can teach like complex concept without having to learn like new concept, and that because of that, people can understand way easier, and that today a teacher's job is only about educating it. Like they don't have to change like the system. But today we'd like to point out something is that today there is a huge difference between educating about these online lingo versus integrating them, and that is a major fault today, right? Today they are not talking about integrating these like online lingo into their syllabus, but in fact they're only talking about educating because of the fact that they have mentioned how like today it is not their, like you can't expect these teachers to be able to stop the system of them and like improve their attention span and everything because of the fact that even if we were to not use these online lingos, right, they will still use it regardless. So like why not just use it, right? But today, let us talk about what is being a teacher, right? Today as a teacher, we are the face of education. And by being a face of education, it means that today our actions are encouragement. Now, let's look at an example, right? Today, if a bullying happens in class, right, and like someone tells the teacher, but the teacher ignores it, what would the prosecutor think of this? They would think of this as a validation. They would think of the teacher's quiet as like something that, hey, yeah, you can continue. Why is that? Because today I am a teacher, I'm the head of this class, right? And if I don't say anything, then there is no one else in power that can help speak out for you. That is what it's like being a teacher, right? Especially when you are the face of education. And now this moves on to the fact that they're talking about how today this system is something that you cannot change. But today I'd like to question, if the system is already something that is broken, if today the education system is something that very much is rotten and needs to be changed, who else is supposed to tackle this issue? Who else is supposed to change it if not an educator? If today your job as an educator and you choose to just ignore it because of the fact that it is something that is too deeply rooted and that you just choose to ignore it, then what is the point of being an educator today? If that is the case and we take the government side's logic today, there will be a lot more corruption happening in today's case. For example, if corruption is happening in government, in political issues, does that mean that we should just ignore it because of the fact it's too deeply rooted and that it is too complicated? No, it does not. Why is that? Because today, as someone who is the government, as someone who is representing the people, we should make sure that we have credibility. We should make sure that we can actually teach people and that we actually have the those to be able to stand on stage here and be able to teach you, right? We need to make sure that we have the ability. And with that, yes, your PI.
How is it that your side is able to improve the attention span without even directly engaging with what the linguals are?
All right, now, I'll talk about respect, right? You have mentioned how that today there are two reasons that why children are like this today. Because number one, they have short attention span, and number two, they don't respect tradition like teachers or traditions. Because the fact that they lack respect, right? And that why is that? Because today they can't relate, so they won't respect. So today, like, with the government stance, right, they're going to be feeding into this behavior because of the fact that, oh, it's too deeply rooted and that today I want to relate to this teacher. I want to be that teacher that everyone relates to. I want to be that cool teacher. Therefore, I will be feeding into this behavior. I will be using this to integrate it into my syllabus and teach them. But today, that is only going to make it worse. That is only going to make it so that people won't respect. And what does this look like, right? Today, the impact of this is that, does it mean that families should actually do this to earn respect? As, for example, does my grandma need to learn online lingo, learn like what is sigma, what is risk, what is no cap in order for her to earn my respect? No, it does not. Today, if I lack respect, that means that is something that should be changed, and instead not something that should just be ignored because of the fact that it is too deeply rooted and that it is something that is of the current generation and not something that the older generation should take care of. Number two, we're talking about how we have to adapt so that students can understand, and that today it is the new method and it's not bad. Today, once again, I would like to bring back to the fact that today as a teacher, we are a face of education. Now, I'd like to give out an example of why they have mentioned how it is mnemonics and how we actually use mnemonics to study. But today, let's look at an example, right? Despite being a Malaysian and despite learning Malay since I have been in primary school, today I'm not someone who is fluent in Malay. So when I see online lingo or online trends or even just the mnemonics of like Malay being shortened, for example, if I see Sabat being written as SB, I might think of it as Chinese in another different context. That I would not think of it as it that being is sabab, or I would not see it as in another different meaning. Why is that? Because today, as someone who is not fluent in that language, as someone who is not chronically online, I wouldn't necessarily know what does sabab mean. I would not know that it means like shut your bitch ass up. Like, sorry, I would not know that it means that. So especially today, if you're a teacher, right, if you're going to be teaching this, in fact, you're going to be integrating this into your system, that means that you more or less has to be able to understand what it means. So today, they have mentioned how there is like they have to set the parameters so that it doesn't evolve into a demeaning way. So the government side, in fact, do agree that there exists the risk of the fact that it will evolve into something that is in a demeaning way, and that students will actually misunderstand this. So today, you are just setting yourself up for even more failures. Because if you were to misunderstand this meaning, if you were to teach the wrong meaning, that means that you are quite literally teaching an entire generation of the wrong thing and teaching them to use it in a demeaning way. Today, what if, for example, sabao is it means such a bitch out. But today, what if like when you're doing research, you're trying to see like what it means, and you see that it is another meaning, and you just casually teach it to your students. People will be like your students will be going out there and using it, like talking to others and everything, and thinking that hey, it doesn't mean such a bitch us up. And that's the risk of that. Today, when you're at the face of education, it is very important that you teach your students what. Okay, and number two is that what will happen, right? Today, when you teach your students. When you embrace online lingo and trends into your education syllabus, what will happen, right? The literacy will decline. In the current status quo, we can already see like younger generations' literacy are on the decline. For example, they are unable to communicate without the use of another lingo, of like online lingo, and just like I've mentioned, right, it has like already become the norm because it's something that I prefer. Like they see their friends using it, they see TikTok using it. Like it is something that people will prefer to use. Why is that? Because today it's easy to understand. It is something that you don't have to learn again, and because of that, people will choose to abandon like the actual history and tradition of language. Today, let us not forget that language and education in itself is something that is absolutely gorgeous. It is something that has history. It is something that has been passed along. Today, being able to learn, having education and being able to learn language in itself is a luxury. Back then, people did not have any sort of method to learn language. Which is why, for example, traditional versus simplified Chinese, this is something that I think is what the government is trying to achieve today. Today, why did traditional become simplified Chinese, right? Because back then, it was hard for people to learn education, right? It is hard for them to learn language, and traditional Chinese is something that is very hard to understand, and therefore they decided to simplify it just so that people can understand. That is, I believe, what their side is trying to achieve, to be able to improve the education, right? But today, let's look at how today it is not something as simple as simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese turning to simplified Chinese. Because today, if you know traditional Chinese, you will know simplified Chinese. But today, if you know English, that doesn't necessarily mean that you will know online lingo or trends. Why is that? Because today, if you were to understand online lingo and trends, it means that you have to be online to begin with to understand that lingo. And because of that, today, in their side of teaching, it is in fact not making it any easier to understand anything, or is it making it easier to understand, to actually improve the education, right? Today, to summarize what I've just mentioned, is that today, context and definition are constantly changing, meaning that online lingos and trends are actually full of inconsistency, meaning that today, as a teacher, right, you need to make sure that you have credibility, you need to make sure that what you are teaching is consistent, right? You cannot be suddenly teaching like about Lamau or like race or whatever, and then all of a sudden you switch to like another online lingo or another trend. Like even if today a minority of students can catch up, it doesn't necessarily mean that the majority can. Even if today we were to be charitable and said that only one student cannot catch up, right? Today, as an educator, your job is to exactly focus on bringing that one student up to the literacy level. Today, just because of the fact that something is hard and something is difficult and something is too deeply rooted doesn't mean that you should ignore it. Today, we believe that the government's stance of being an educator in itself, they have already forgotten the motive and forgotten what it is like to be the face of education. Today, we believe that the government side is someone who is actually very irresponsible and that they are unable to actually improve the education system. With that, vote for opposition if you want to better the education system. Thank you. Not better than I expected.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition, calling upon government will.
Good enough, I think.
Here, here.
I have no idea. Hold on. Oh, understand usage. Oh my God, sorry.
Online lingos and trends in the internet has already exist in this generation. And the fact that the teacher does not integrate the use of such lingos in real life does not abandon or restrict the students from using it, which is why we say that it is more important that it becomes an incentive for the teacher to use, to educate, to integrate and educate such online lingos and trends in the classroom so that the children can and the students can better learn how to use it correctly. As the government whip, 3 clashes I'm going to paint today. Firstly, which house provides better education? Second, what is the responsibility of the teacher? And thirdly, whether integration of lingo is better in enhancing the education in this generation. Firstly, on which house provides better education? Now, education nowadays likes to avoid sensitive topics instead of guiding or teaching the students the right way to approach.
Firstly, because why? Students require correct guidance in sensitive or controversial topics. But internet trends are often accessed by students without the guidance of adults. Why is that bad? Because firstly, we are unsure what is the platforms that the students use to gain such information. There is a very high chance for students to be likely to use the website or the social media to gain such information, but we could not control how the student treat or how the student absorb or understand such information. Second, to follow this trend, the students are likely to use such trend just to grab attention or sounds interesting to their friends, which likely to lead to exploitation of internet slangs. And thirdly, because this kind of slangs was meant to be funny, but students might use this to insult others, accidentally offended their friends, or use this during inappropriate moments. These three reasons are the main reasons why the teacher has a larger incentive to integrate the use of online lingos to properly educate students on how to use them. Now, but in opposition side, they choose to ignore this just because they claim that the using of online lingos by teacher could become a bad influence. But they completely neglects this they choose to completely neglect this. This leads to, firstly, as teacher, you are unable to satisfy the expectation or the excitement of your students towards yourself, and I'll be elaborating that later. But second, you still can't avoid students from accessing this info at the first place. So instead of rejecting it and acting as if this trend doesn't exist, our house choose to make full use of it, since students nowadays are so easily influenced by internet and attracted by the trends. We choose to incorporate this into your education, and we take a step ahead to educate the student first before they have a wrong understanding of the online lingos. Before these words are being exploited by students, we teach them the correct way to use. I'll accept it later. Because the students lack the ability to recognize what is right or wrong. Second, for instance, as our first speaker has already mentioned, sex education nowadays, we avoided such sensitive topics, but this leads to lack of information in students in such aspect, which then leads to problems such as sex insults and inappropriate sex words. Same goes to a new type of education that is important, but opposition completely neglect today, which is online lingo and trends. And yes, if you're right.
Okay, so we do acknowledge the fact that there is in fact consequences if we were to avoid talking about sex. But today, can you prove the fact that there is actually a consequences that are extremely detrimental consequences of not embracing online lingo?
Now, this leads to our second clashes, which is the responsibility of teacher. Now, these educations are so important in the status quo, but not given enough credit. Why is that so? Two reasons. Because firstly, the internet has become something the students evolve themselves with every day, and it is inevitable that they might come across such online lingos and trends. Second, why people tend, this leads to my second clash, which is the responsibility of teacher. Why people in this era tend to refrain teacher from acting such way. Opposition claim that teacher is the face of education, and they should not bring such bad influence to their education. But three replies. Firstly, traditional mindset tells us that teachers and students are in different levels, and teachers should not do such trendy things because they are the person who provide education. It will destroy their image of an educator. But what defines educator? Who defines what an educator should look like? Who tells you that educator must be a whole poker voice in whole day and could not follow the trends of the students? Educator there is not a specific definition of educator. The environment, the time, the age, the generation, we define what educator should look like. Note that respect on teacher does not build on how professional or how serious a teacher is, but respect builds on how student has an approval towards the teacher from the bottom of their heart. But this respect is lacking in this era due to the changes of generation. But as a teacher, what is your incentive of teaching? You have to gain respect for your student first before the student is willing to accept the knowledge that you are telling, that you are teaching. Our side tells you that the way the teacher can earn respect in the easiest way, can gain likability in the fastest way, at the same time provide education to the student is through integrating online lingos and trends in their education. While your side chooses to continue the boring and traditional way that is already not suitable in this generation. Your side claims that if a teacher loses respect, it is their own problem and they should find other solutions instead of using the online lingos and trends. But we tell you that why is it harm for teacher to integrate the use of online lingos and trends, where firstly, it provides you with more respect, and secondly, you are able to educate the right use of them at the same time. It might be okay for traditional, but in this education, in this generation, we have to talk on status quo, and the students in such generations prefer the use of internet slangs. So we should maximize and utilize such things that could benefit in our education. Now, opposition claims that the teachers using such integration will bring bad influence. Now, this is not an excuse of not teaching it, because it is the burden of the teacher to correctly integrate such lingos in education. Second speaker has already tell you the mechanism for us to educate to use the lingos. Second, on government side, we claim that on opposition side, they claim that how we should refrain students from using lingos because these words are bad. But government, as a teacher, not teaching lingo does not directly lead to student not using it. Instead, if a student knows their teacher hates such lingos, they were even more likely to talk such lingos behind the teacher. But on our side, teachers shows that they are willing to openly discuss such trends. The students are likely to have conversation with the teacher about lingos. And if they wrongly understand or the use or inappropriate way of use of lingos, the teacher can remind them. So they claim that teachers are teaching students who don't know lingos. But we tell you that it's not, because the teachers is not teaching about new knowledge, but educating the right use of it. With that, never been prouder to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. Now for the final substantive part of the debate topic.
Mic.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'd like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Subao Lividan Lamau Lor No Cap. Panel, did you understand a single word that I have just said? Now, this is a prominent problem in today's case. Inconsistency. Now, as my first speaker and second speaker has constantly put out and has said, these trends and online lingos are inconsistent. I would like to strengthen this point right now. Now, as my first and second speaker has said, when this teacher integrate these online lingos in their class, right, what are they gonna do? How are they gonna use them? First things first, let's make one thing clear. We are not educating them on these online lingos. I suppose that the government side has gotten this thing wrong in our case today. We are not educating these students on what these online lingos are. We are only integrating them. This is the main point. Secondly, these teachers have to actively learn and adapt to the different trends that are ongoing in the recent years. For example, today, risk might mean, charisma and sorts, but it could be a possibility where in recent or later years, risk could change, the meaning of risk could be changed. And now that would be really bad and have a negative impact on the teachers integrating these words because they are inconsistent. Their meanings can be changed, their definition can be changed. So why should we use them? Why should we use these short form meanings when we have words that have, concrete meaning and, from the English dictionary? There is proof of it, where trends and online lingos can change over time due to, how these online people or chronic people want them to. They could be, they could change the definition and meaning of it. So why should we use this if it is inconsistent? Why should we integrate this? Now, moving on, your POI.
Would you rather a student learn lingo, or would that, because it's easy, or would you rather them completely forgo the formal English because they deem it as difficult?
I'll answer this POI with my second point. Now, this point is all about easiness. How will the students adapt to this? Like when the teachers integrate online lingos, how can we prove, how do we analyze that this will actually be easier for the students? Now, I'd like to explain this by 2 layers, 2 points. I'd like to characterize students as 2 groups. As my first speaker has stated, students can be people that know these online lingos, they already have knowledge of these, or they could be social or economically bad, they have no money and they have no touch with these online lingos. Okay? It could be students that know and students who doesn't know these online lingos. Now, I find it very unfair that the government side thinks that it will be easier for the students if there's a side of a part of the students who doesn't really understand these online lingos. Now, would this be easier for these students who doesn't even know this online lingo? And when the teacher integrate it, would it mess up their knowledge of this? Like imagine if one day the teacher is teaching maybe science, all right, and he says, low key, this plant, his baddie is photosynthesis, all right? Like photosynthesis is a baddie to this plant, And, in the dictionary, bad means bad, But in online lingo, baddie could also mean very good. This is online lingo. It could mean different things. Now, would this be easier for these students that, didn't have first-hand knowledge of this? No, he would think that it's hard because he can't differentiate, which is correct and which is right. Is the teacher, is this correct or should I listen to the teacher and thoughts? That would be harder. So what you've said and what the argument that you have provided has actually shot yourself in the foot. And number 3, according to relatability. Now, I find it very hard to understand because you guys, the analyzation of this is, you guys have said that as long as the teacher integrate these online lingos and trends, they would be relatable to the students. Now, I find it very hard to link because you guys lack the analyzation of how as long as these teachers were to use this online lingo, it would be as relatable as these students. Because first of all, we have to understand how can a person be relatable to a person. Now, these people that are relatable to this person, right, they have to experience something of sorts or at least know what they've gone through, right, in order to be deemed as relatable. Now, if today as a teacher, right, your main goal is to be hip with the students, right, you want to be cool, you want to be respected, right, and you learn these online lingos. You don't really know where they come from, you just use them and you understand them, right? Now, would that really be relatable to these students? No, because you're just learning them for the sake of learning them. You're learning them for the sake of being respected, being cool. And that's not the job of a teacher. As my first and second speaker has constantly said, the job of a teacher is to educate students, is to teach these students the right thing. Now, this leads to my 4th point. Is online lingo practically correct? Is it the right thing? Now, according to the characteristics and the evidence that I provided by my last points, right, these online lingos and these trends could potentially be morally bad. Now, no matter how you look at it, I'll give a really easy example, like sebao. There's a bad word in it, all right? I'll say it's a bad word. Now, is it really, really good? Can you change this word to be morally right? If this teacher today really for example, if today the top trend right now is to use this word, sebao, if you want to be hip, you want to be respected, you want to be cool teacher, you have to use this word, sebao. But there is a really bad word in it. How am I supposed to integrate this into, my educational syllabus? How am I supposed to teach this to, when I teach my students, I want to integrate this word. No matter how you look at it, there's always going to be a sort of gray area. There's no possible way an online, a bad word or an online lingo, right, can never be morally correct or right in a sense, all right? Now, I would like to emphasize on the impact that our side has given today. Now, today, we're not rejecting this overall point. What we're saying today and intending to you guys is we should stay in the status quo. Why is this important? It is due to the recent decline of our, English literacy. Now, why is this important? Why is literacy important? Why is this subject very impactful to our students? Now, no matter how you look at it, if you go into the outside world, right, you would have to use your English language skills or Chinese language skills. You have to use your literacy in order to persuade people, especially in the status quo, right? You have to use your words to empower people. You have to use your words to persuade people. It is the status quo. And if the literacy level is lowered due to this, and we do not, and as teachers, we do not teach the importance of literacy to students, how will these students learn? How will these students acknowledge the importance of literacy? Now, for example, Bahasa Melayu. This is a great example. Due to recently, the recent trends of Malay people, Malay students, they use a sort of language called rojak. Rojak. Is this in a sense a decline of literacy? Have you guys seen the impact of this? It is due to rojak. People think that this tradition is dying out. People are not using the original language more, and they're using this new rojak, more a simple, simplified way, simplified, language. Now, this is why I hope you guys will vote side opposition, and thank you. My speech ends here.
That marks the substantive part of the debate. Next, inviting opposition replies. Here.
Two main clash points I would like to address in my reply speech here today that has been brought out by our side's case, right? First of all, it's about the accessibility, which I hear no engagement from the other side, so I believe we take this point entirely. Second of all, it's about the inconsistencies, right? So when we talked about inconsistencies, what did they bring out? They brought out about educating and teaching the definition of these online lingo and trends. But what do we see in this motion here today? What does integrate the use of in online lingo and trends? We don't see educate them about about online lingo and trends. So we believe that their side is on a misconception, right? But even if we take this as it is, right? Even if we take them, okay, we accept their case of educating, I guess. Let me ask you a question. When a student, who's more on the internet, a student or a teacher, right? They have characterized these students as people who are constantly online, right? I think we share the same characterization, right? So, as someone who's constantly online, right? I believe personally, I have more contact with these words. I have more understanding. I see these words used in different contexts more compared to my teacher who only did one night research on what this meaning is, and that my teacher should be educating me about these online lingos, and that my previous understanding of it is completely wrong. Will I believe that? I don't think so, because I have already been exposed to this online lingo for such a long time. I've already had my own understanding. I built my own understanding on it for such a long time. Once my teacher tells me, oh, this is incorrect, actually you should use this definition, am I gonna obey? I don't think so, right? So this doesn't necessarily, this proves their side's case of trying to combat our inconsistencies with educating, it doesn't necessarily even come into play. And second, okay, so I'm now going to do some weighing, right? What their side gets from this is attention, right? They get attention from the students, but does getting attention necessarily mean that these students will actually pay attention in class? No, they'll pay attention when you are using these slangs. They'll pay attention like, oh my god, my teacher said something so funny. And then would they continue listening on if we should start babbling on about some sort of math equation? I don't think so, right? Personally, okay. Now, they also talked about how using this sort of lingo will actually help us talk about sensitive topics, right? This is not exclusive to their side, I believe. Talking about sensitive topics, this point, you should not credit to them because it's not exclusive at all. Sensitive topics do not come from online lingo and trends. It's not something that can be brought out with online lingo and trends, right? It's not exclusive to their side that they are paying attention to sensitive topics, which you should not credit them or anything on that. So, both of our sides, I believe, have reached a consensus of how influential teachers are, and right. So, but today we are on an active motion. Me as a teacher, what would I do? As a teacher on itself, like, would I be willing to say, learn all of these things, learn all of this online lingo and such, and like actually dive in, like to actually, to fully understand online lingo and trends, I will have to spend so many times. I need to spend equal amount of times as my student on the internet to fully understand what it is like in their perspective, how do they see this, and how can I correct, and how do I change this? Do you think this is an efficient way of teaching? Me as a teacher, will I be able to go to this far extent to teach my students to actually, or I need to be brain rotted to understand brain rot, right? So with all these, as a teacher, as an active motion, as a teacher, I believe there are many other ways and I can improve myself. I can improve the way I speak. I can improve the way I convey. I can improve the way I can reference some cultural references, right? Some pop cultural references to actually grab the attention span of my students. So me as a teacher, I do not believe that this is an efficient way of teaching to my students. And with that, I end my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob reply. To wrap up the debate, inviting Gov reply. Here.
When we take a look at the current education system, people are falling asleep in classes. They are giving up on their entire education because they say that they somehow have a shit teacher because they are boring. These teachers are boring and do not engage with these students. It is used as an excuse for these students in the status quo to give up on their education based on the reasoning that teachers are not engaging. This is the status quo that opposition pushes in the debate today. Note that for this entire debate, it is an active motion, which means that it is only the incentive of the teacher to be able to educate a student and to do what is something that is ensured that there is benefit to yourself. 3 goals in this debate. Both sides had to prove that there had to be a better quality of education. Number 2, they had to prove that the attitude of students towards you and that specific education is much more better and much more positive. Number 3, they had to prove that somehow the idea of lingo being misused within your students had to be addressed. Let's first visit the first goal, the quality. Note that on opposition side, they did not provide any incentive or any measures that improve the specific quality of education. Because students do not feel engaged, there is no other alternative measure that opposition provided that forces students to want to be engaged in their educations. And whereas on our side, we provided you with not just engagement, but rather we provided you with specific models such as mnemonics and people being able to understand concepts easily. Number 2, the engagement and likability, the attitude of students towards you and the specific education system. Note that when people do raise jokes, do raise anomalies and trends and these lingos, people feel engaged. Whether it be a moment, it is much better compared to the opposition side, where somehow people do not feel engaged with this entire idea, and they just feel like they dissociate with the entire education system without even thinking about it further on. Number 3. Note that the idea of lingo being misused was directly addressed on our side. So the problem with this entire debate is that both sides agree that teachers should in fact teach why is it that lingo cannot be applied in certain circumstances. But the comparison on both sides, the trade-off is that on proposition side, we provided you exactly how is it that this lingo should be used. Teachers implemented it in the right way, in the right context. Whereas on your side, whereas on opposition side, you are just trying to educate students on how is it that lingo should not be used. And the fact that it's not just that people do not people do not want to internalize that feeling, people do not want to understand it, is that no one is even hearing you to begin with. Because it is then seen as somehow you are not a likable teacher. It is then seen as someone, there is no implication, there is no need for them to listen to you if in fact you are not someone close to them. So, for this entire debate, note that proposition was never pushing the idea of how we have to replace the traditional language with these type of lingos, but rather what we had to prove to you is exactly why is it that we integrate these lingo to the languages to add it into our education system. It necessarily helps us, it reduce our burden as a teacher. So it was never our burden to engage exactly why is it that formal English was being replaced, because the fact of the matter is formal English was never replaced with. It was in fact easier on proposition side to prove to you why is it that students tend to engage with formal English more, because lingo is used as stepping stone. Lingo is something that's relatable to them. When people see trends, people tend to engage with it much more, and it is a stepping stone for them to engage further on with formal English language. For this entire debate, note that we have already proved to you exactly why the quality of education is much more better on proposition sides. We have already proved to you exactly why is it that it's more likely for you to succeed as a teacher when students tend to engage with you much more, and students tend to have a positive attitude and a positive impression of the entire education system. And number 3, we are directly addressing the misuse of lingo by directly calling out and implementing it in the right way and setting yourself as the role model the opposition so wanted to be. So for all of the reasons above, proposed. Thank you.
Thank you to both teams for a very fun debate. Cross class, shake hands. We will announce the results soon as the judges have been reviewed. Thank you.